Hi, Happy New Year, and welcome to Bucky's Bites and Bits and the first ever episode, debut episode of 2x2 Kitchen. My name is Malorie. Actually, my nickname is Bucky, and that is a name that I got from my family as I was growing up. Now, I don't really know the actual origins of why I suddenly became Bucky, but I was told it was because I was short and round like buckshot. So, in the kitchen, we are going to be making Raggedy puff pastry. Puff pastry, a lot of people are a little nervous to try to make puff pastry. They think it's very complicated and things like that, but it is actually not very complicated at all. It has very few ingredients that go into it. The most important parts of it are to make sure that you have very cold butter, very cold water, and it is in the folding, because you're going to be rolling out and folding your dough several times over, as a matter of fact 6 total times, to give you those light flaky layers. And the very cold butter also helps keep those layers separated and keeps it nice and flaky and really nice. So now let's get started. Here are other ingredients and the things that we're going to be needing to make Raggedy puff pastry. It does require a countertop to do the dough out on, and unfortunately in the 2x2 kitchen we're very limited on space, and thankfully I have a smooth top stove, and this ceramic stovetop has been the most wonderful thing for me to be able to do doughs and things like that on it, because it works out quite nicely. And what we have is 18 tablespoons of butter that we've chilled in the freezer, cut up into sections and chilled into the freezer for an hour. We have 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour. We have 3/4 a teaspoon of salt, and we of course have our cold water. The only other things that we are going to be needing is I've got my rolling pin, I have got my pastry cutter. You'll see how these all come in handy in a little bit, and saran wrap. Okay, let's get started. Like I said, as we go along, bear with me, this will all come together and you will see how it's going to. So we're going to set some of this stuff aside a minute, and then we'll get started with a rather unconventional thing, and that is dumping our flour right out on our stovetop. Okay, we've done that. Now we are going to add our salt to that. Okay, whoops, forgot a little bit. I'll get a little bit more in there, sorry. Okay, now I like to just kind of mix it up a little bit so that the salt is not just all in one spot, and then I'm going to make kind of a little well. There you go. Okay, and we're going to grab our butter, and we are just going to put our butter right down in the middle of this, so all of it, all 18 tablespoons. And trust me, I know it sounds like a lot of butter, but it's necessary. And essentially what we're going to do, these are going to be our biggest tools today. We are just going to kind of push it together, and it's going to be hard because the butter is very frozen, but trust me, this will all come out. Okay, and what we do is we take the butter and we are going to start chopping up the butter a little bit so we can incorporate it a little bit better. So we do this like this. Okay. Sometimes it gets the better of you. Okay. Just kind of chop it. We're just kind of basically taking each one and just cutting it, at the very least we're cutting them in half. Now, this recipe specifically calls for, and I forgot to mention, unsalted butter, which is what I have here, is unsalted butter. Now, I have found that it also works quite well with margarine. You don't have the firmness of the butter as much with margarine as you do with the unsalted butter. So there is some pluses and minuses to it, but the end product actually is just as good to me. I realize professional chefs and stuff out there in the world are going to be going, ah, no, she didn't say that. But you can, and it is cheaper to use margarine than it is to use the unsalted butter. But either way, it's going to come out delicious. So now that we've done this, okay, now we see our pile, and I know what you're saying, it's not really incorporated, so that's okay. Oof. Okay, now we've got our water that we have chilled. We're going to need 2/3 of a cup of water, but we're going to add it like 1/3 of a cup at a time. Okay, so what we're going to do, and we have to work fast because this is going to want to run all over the place, is we're going to make a little well and we're going to pour our water into it. Okay, just like that. And then we're going to start just kind of piling the flour onto it, and as it escapes, we're just going to push it back into play. Just keep pushing it back into play, and trust me, this will all work out. It looks messy, and it is, but trust me that it is just really all going to work out quite nicely. So we just kind of push that all, we're just kind of pushing it all together. We're going to gather up the water, and we're just going to keep pushing it together. Keep rolling it around in our hands and pushing it together. Okay, as soon as we've got this as incorporated as we can for the moment, then what we're going to do now is we're going to, believe it or not, we're going to add the rest of the water. Okay, I kind of knock off my hands there a little bit. Okay, now we're going to put another 1/3 of a cup of water. Again, make our little well. Add the water, and that is all the water that we're going to need. Trust me on this, that it is all going to come out beautifully. Okay, so now we just keep pushing it together. We're just molding it together. We're getting the water as incorporated as we can. And we just keep working it. Roll it a little bit so we can get these together. All right. We're almost to a somewhat cohesive lump. Okay, just going to kind of gather this all together from the sides as best we can. Okay, we'll keep pushing into it. Okay, looking good, or looking like it's supposed to anyway. Let's put it that way. All right. Perfect. Now, we've got our rough pile here. Okay, so we're going to take our pastry cutter and we're going to cut it in half. Just like that. And then we're going to take one side, put it up on top of the other side, and we're going to push them together. Just like that. I know that when I first made this, I was freaking out because of the way it looked. Because you got big chunks of butter, you got flour, not necessarily, just kind of clinging, just kind of hanging on. And I'm the kind of person that kind of likes things a little organized. So it was a little weird for me to see that happening, but it actually worked out quite nicely. And actually you're going to cut this, you're going to do this 3 times. I say actually a lot, but anyway, you're going to do this 3 times. So this is number 2. And squish them together. Just press them together, just like this. Doing great. Okay. Now we're gonna roll again like that. Just kind of get it together, formed as best we can. Looking good. All right, one more time. We're gonna cut it right in half, just like this. And then for difference, we're gonna take this one and we're gonna set it on top of that one. And we're gonna push them together. Whoop! Now the butter gets escaped. Okay. Push it together. There you go. Okay, now you have got this as incorporated as it's going to be for this first moment. And that's fine. We're going to do that. And we're going to do this. Roll it together. as best we can. Okay, we're going to slide that over there. I'm going to kind of roll out what's left over there. Here we have a lovely little surface there. Now, we're going to roll it out now. You may not think this is a good time to do that, but this is what we're going to do. So just watch me. Grabbing my rolling pin. And I'm going to push and roll. Push and roll. It's supposed to look very rough, very ragged. That's why it's called Raggedy Puff. Raggedy Puff pastry. It's not going to look like this when all's said and done. Trust me. Okay, we might need a little bit of flour up on this. So we're going to borrow a little bit from the edges here. Kind of give it a little bit of flour. But we're just going to roll it out. It's going to get it together. Rolled out as best we can. Okay. It's looking good. Alright. I think I will get a little bit of flour to sprinkle on that. Not too much. You don't want to add too much extra flour to it. Just a little bit. Just enough. Just enough. Okay. Just enough. There we go. A little less butter stickage. Alright, now we're going to roll that out. It looks lovely. Just like this. Now, what you're looking at is the big chunks of butter, barely clinging flour, and big and long. Okay, now we have taken our first roll of puff pastry out of the refrigerator. Now you can see we had it wrapped in the saran wrap, and when you're rolling it out, after you've done your first fold, you want to make, just stick your finger in it, essentially. That way you can keep track of how many folds that you've done. In this case, we've got, one little divot here that tells me that I've rolled it one time. Okay, and to let you all see a little bit better what I'm talking about big chunks of butter and barely held together dough at this particular point in time, it will all come together. It has to be a total of 6 rolls and folds before we get to the finished product, and it's probably going to be 5 or 6 roll before we get to a more cohesive looking dough. Okay, now let's get started. We're going to set this aside for just a minute, and we're going to put a little bit of flour on the countertop or stovetop in this case. You don't want to put too much, just enough. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing with the rolling pin, just kind of help it do it a little easier. Okay, now we're just going to take our dough. Save your saran wrap, you're going to be needing that again in a minute. Good, we're going to put that over here, pardon me. We're just going to lay it down here just like this. And a light sprinkle of flour. And we're going to roll. As you see, we'll roll it. Because the butter is so firm, it does make it, you have to have some muscle put into it in order to roll it out. Again, you're not looking for perfection. You just want to roll it out nicely. Probably, roughly speaking, and don't get a tape measure, roughly 18 inches long. You're not worried about the width, just getting the length a little bit. Kind of rolling it out. Okay. These parts are the easiest parts. The thing that's the most time consuming is putting it in the refrigerator. Because you have to wait 30 minutes between roll times. So we're going to take our pastry cutter again. I'm going to square off our edges as best we can. And there you go. Okay, looking good. Now, we're just going to do the trifold again. In this instance, I like rotating back and forth. For instance, this side went down first, this side went over it. So this side, I'm going to go for this end first and back and forth. I know, it's just a weird little thing I I like to make sure all the sides have had their turn. Okay, and I'm just going to fold it over like that. Oop. And scrape this side up. And we're going to fold it over like that. Okay, and I'll bring that over to show you. And we're going to pick it up like this. Okay. And now we have done our second roll. Okay, and as you can see, we still have big chunks of butter. And we're going to take our finger and we're just going to make 2 little dents in it. 1, 2. That lets us know, in case we forget, that we have actually rolled it twice, and then we're on our second fold. We'll grab our saran wrap back again. Put it in there and just wrap it up. Boop. And we're ready to go into the refrigerator again for another 30 minutes. See you soon. Roll number 5, and the dough itself is actually starting to come together. Still have some big chunks of butter, but those will incorporate as we go. Okay, now we are on to our last folding roll. This is roll out number 6. And let's go. Okay, the dough's coming together really nicely. Really happy with it. Okay, that is roll number 6. It has come together to form a really nice dough. As you can see, some of the butter you can still see quite clearly, but that's okay. It's all part of the puff pastry dough. Now you can take this, I would refrigerate it for roughly about an hour longer, and then you can use it to make so many wonderful things, either sweet or savory. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this episode 1 of 2x2 Kitchen. Thank you for joining us at Bucky's Bites and Bits. Thanks so much. Have a great day.